Thank you. Hello, welcome to this afternoon session. Before we begin the session, I have a couple of housekeeping rules, which you all know. Please silence your phones, and the photography is permitted only when the speaker does not object to it. Recording of the program is not available after the annual meeting. And then there's ABRF social media, and then be careful what you share. And unless noted by the speaker, please hold the question until end of the session. As you all know, we have a ABRF app. I hope you have downloaded it. Otherwise, I think one of the QR codes was about it. And we also request, after you attend the meeting, we'll send you a survey. Please respond to it so that we can plan the next year's event. This afternoon session with Dr. Beth Garvy, FASEB Amplifying ABR's role in science, policy, and advocacy. What we are going to do is we are going to have a sponsor speak, and then we will have Nick from University of Maryland School of Medicine talk something about FASEB so that we are all in the paint. Then Dr. Garvey will speak, and that's the agenda for this afternoon. With that said, I'm going to invite Andrew J. Barry from the New England Biolabs, one of our sponsors, to talk about new NEB next.
Excellent. Thank you so much. My name is Andrew Barry, and I'm happy to be speaking on behalf of New England Biolabs here today. I'm the Associate Director of Product Portfolio Management for our Next Generation Sequencing Sample Prep product line, NEB Next. So what I'll be talking about over the next 10 minutes is really the future of that and where we're going. And part of that is what we need of the community to make sure that we're building the right tools and addressing the right challenges. So before we talk about the future, talk a little bit about the past and who NEB is. Last year we celebrated our 50th anniversary, so founded in 1974, really as a coalition of scientists for scientists, so building products that are used and using those profits to drive our own research to develop new and better products based on the needs of the community. We consider ourselves to be leaders in recombinant enzyme discovery, development, production, and distribution, so being able to get our products built in the highest quality and get them to all the places in the world where scientists need them. We are a research-driven organization. 280 of our employees, of roughly 700, are dedicated to basic science, basic and applied research. So really a focus on science and making sure that we're developing the right tools, that our products can be used as a control in your experiments and not a variable. We are a global company. We have 10 global subsidiaries around the world, again, making sure we can get our products to where they need to be used as rapidly and efficiently as possible. As far as quality goes, we've implemented many quality systems through the years, mainly responsive to the needs as they've evolved for the community itself. So we have ISO 9001, 1345, and in 2020 we launched our GMP grade production facility for the development of products that are used in really mRNA therapeutics, so to develop mRNA therapeutics. 2021, from a social and responsibility standpoint, we achieved B Corp status. For those of you who aren't familiar, this is one of the highest standards for industry for both corporate and environmental responsibility. Really what our priorities fall under is the advancement of science, stewardship of the environment, and taking care of the people that we rely on the most, including the scientific community. So before we talk about the future, talk a little bit about kind of where we've come. This is enzyme discovery back in the 90s, where we'd have researchers hiking out to Yellowstone to look for extremophiles in thermal vents. To try to find the right types of species to develop enzymes. Today, that process is a lot easier based on 2025 technology. So through combination of environmental sampling, metagenomic database mining, being able to apply machine learning and artificial intelligence to look for motifs that are useful in the enzyme development. And really, if you think about the majority of the enzymes that are in a catalog, they come from the sort of bacterial immune systems fending off phages, so phage defense systems. So studying those gives us an idea an idea of what's happening, and we're really just at the tip of the iceberg in terms of understanding what enzymes are naturally occurring and how we can harness that to bring better products and disruptive science. This publication that you see here it came out a couple years ago, really just using this process of meta-GPA to find a whole new class of cytosine deaminases that can be used for methylation profiling, as well as a whole bunch of other applications that are interesting. In terms of our product portfolio, we're scientists for scientists, so everything you see in our portfolio are really what you would need to develop and discover new enzymes and bring those to market. So everything on the research side, from a discovery, next-gen sequencing, detection technologies, and amplification, all the way through RNA and genome engineering, DNA enzymes and cloning, so that we can build these constructs, and then expression systems for protein to be able to actually produce them at scale. So this is where we get our expertise from. This is where we learn what the problems are, but we also rely on the community to be able to decipher those. Specifically today, we'll talk a little bit about our NEB Next portfolio. So this is a portfolio that's been around for over 15 years now. There's actually over 100 products in that portfolio, so it's a very broad portfolio and really geared at trying to address the fundamental needs, be it sample input types, sample qualities, all the pieces that you need to be successful. On top of the actual enzymes and kits themselves, there's also the quality aspect of things. So every enzyme that's in our kits is individually quality tested, but also these things are all tested and sequence verified using next generation sequencing assays. So you can, not only the components, but the kit itself, you can tell is going to be able to give the performance that you need. On top of that, dedicated NEB Next tech support, application support, as well as support for automating these workflows on whatever liquid handler that you're using in your laboratory. And then finally, the convenience of this, being able to offer these in multiple different formats, with and without purification beads, bulk formatting, plated reagents, really allow us to address whatever the needs of our customers. And our goal, again, is to make sure that you can use our products in the way that you need to apply them to achieve your research. Not going to go through the product portfolio in any great detail, but you can see it's a very broad one. This is looking at our DNA portfolio, everything from upstream monarch extraction through our sort of ancillary products, FFP repair, microbiome enrichment, through our core library prep reagents, all the way through library quantitation, as well as support for other sequencers, including Ion Torrent, as well as our ONT partnership. Similarly for RNA, again, very broad portfolio, making sure you have all the pieces that you need, oligonucleotides, adapters, indexes, to make sure that you can conduct your experiments as efficiently and smoothly as possible. Again, dealing with all sorts of miniature sample amounts to be able to generate high quality libraries from those. The flagship products right now are our Ultra Express, so these were launched last year. Really focused on that speed and simplicity, so faster workflows, fewer steps, reduction in the amount of consumables, which has a positive environmental impact, and again, the flexibility that you need for the different sample types that you plan on using, and then finally being able to use these in an automation-friendly setting. On the automation side, we have done a lot with our partnerships in liquid handling automation to build out this portfolio of scripts that are available for a variety of different liquid handlers. Here you can see just 3 examples of our Ultra Express that's been automated on 3 different liquid handling platforms. These were all just presented at the SLAS meeting just a couple of months back. One example I want to give of really sort of that trajectory at NEB from research to product. So we have a forthcoming small RNA kit. This came out of a publication back in 2020 where some of our researchers were looking at adapter ligation efficiency and looking at ways to improve that through splint ligation, and realized that they could apply this towards a problem that we're all facing with small RNA, which has some challenges in making sure that you can get the isolates that you want from that without capturing things that you don't want, like your adapters. So they've developed this method. We've since developed this into a product. This is just looking at a synthetic community and being able to show the difference in coverage that you get from that using our new kit versus some of the other ones that are on the market. So as you can see, you get much better coverage, low bias, making sure that you can capture all the species of small and microRNA. Again, doing this in a fast single-day workflow, and anyone who's familiar with these workflows know there's this miserable step in the process that involves a gel cut. So we've eliminated that as well, which again makes us pretty attractive for a lot of people trying to do this type of work. So what's next? So we're continuing to develop around new enzymes, looking at products to support all the different sequencers on the market today. We have a forthcoming quantification kit for Ultima Genomics, working with Element on the CloudBreak Freestyle to support those workflows that use our native kits. Products supporting long-read sequencing, enzymatic fragmentation, also looking at companion modules for Oxford Nanopore. And then infectious disease has become more important for us through the pandemic, but beyond, because we really continue to see that as a place where there's just not enough sequencing happening, so making sure there's good protocols, primer sets, and enzymes to be able to convert isolates from the environment into high-quality libraries. And then finally, epigenetics is a key area for us. We have our kits for enzymatic 5-HMC and 5-MC detection, but continuing to expand that into other areas of epigenetics, including chromatin accessibility. Overall, the goal for us will be to continue to develop faster, more sensitive automation and user-friendly workflows driven by new enzymes. Again, we can try to predict what is needed, but we need you all to be able to tell us what your problems are so that we can actually develop solutions and point the telescope in the right direction to find the things that ultimately are going to have the biggest impact. One of the ways that we're doing that, we're launching what we call our NEB Next Alliance program. This is a program intended to work with core labs and providers to make sure that we can leverage NEB to sort of augment your message through some co-marketing, take advantage of trainings, hands-on trainings of your team and your customers, being able to get early access and beta testing of our products before they hit the market, direct access to our field application scientists, and then work on collaborations and other opportunities to really build that relationship, and we can understand your problems more deeply on a fundamental level. For information on this, please contact us. We'll be at our booth, number 531, but we'd love to talk more about that program. So just want to thank everyone here. A couple things I have to mention for my colleagues. Number one, things that we're doing to try to address some of the challenges in the market today. And again, we want to hear more from you all in terms of how we can better serve this. We have our Monarch Scholarship. It's $2,025 that we're giving for travel or however you need it. This can be applied for online. Deadline is May 1st. And then I want to give a shout out to our research symposium that's happening in Cambridge, Massachusetts in just a couple weeks, Decoding the Biosphere, so really focused on environmental DNA sequencing, which we're very interested for many reasons, both from an environmental sustainability, but also being able to look at what's happening in our environment to be able to discover and categorize new enzyme functions. So with that, I think we'll hold off on any questions. If you guys want to visit us in booth 531, happy to explain any of this in more detail, but thank you all for your attention and really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all.
So this next session is going to talk about FASEB and the work that they do. So for those that don't know, FASEB stands for Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology. They've been around for a long time, and they are comprised of a number of, as it says in the name, a number of scientific societies, ABRF being one of those societies. Like ABRF, it's a volunteer type of organization. Volunteers from the societies that are members participate in FASEB in different ways, and we're going to hear a little bit about that. But participation from our members in FASEB, we have a long history. For those of you who may remember Mark Lively, one of our past presidents, was a past president of FASEB. So with that, I'd like to introduce our current president for FASEB, Beth Garvy. She's going to give you a broad overview of the different programs that FASEB has. Probably the most important, two most important programs are their advocacy and policy. And in today's world, these are two really critical components. So with that, Beth?
It is a pleasure to be here with all of you today. As Nick mentioned, FASEB has been around for quite a while. Currently, the Federation is made up of 22 scientific societies, and we represent about 110,000 scientists. That's actually an important number because when we go to Capitol Hill and we talk about the issues that affect all of us, the fact that we represent that many is important to the people that we talk to. I'm going to talk mostly about what's going on since our world kind of blew up on January 20th. But I would like to start by emphasizing that FASEB has the summer research conferences, and so we sponsor small conferences. We have between 20, I guess we average about 20 every year over the summer, and they've been around for quite a while. These are driven by scientists who have an idea or have a community that they want to have a meeting surrounding, and so those are open for anybody who has an interest in developing a small conference. FASEB is willing to help get that off the ground. We also have 2 journals, and we hope you utilize those journals when you're publishing. And I think maybe one of the really important things we do is we're very interested in developing the workforce. So we're interested in developing young scientists. We have some programs, some fellowship programs that do that. We have an NSF and an NIH grant that sponsors development for young scientists. And I really want to emphasize that we really enjoy having our early career scientists participate in the organization. We have representatives on the board of directors. We have early career representatives in some of our committees. And so any of our early career scientists in any of our societies are welcome to apply to any of these programs. We really encourage your early career scientists to do that. And in fact, we have a few of yours who we're happy to have in some of our programs. Perhaps the thing that our member societies value the most about FASEB, though, is our advocacy, science policy, and our outreach programs. And so I'm going to talk more about that today. I'm going to talk about some of the things that FASEB is doing and some of the things that you can help us do regarding what's going on, particularly in the federal government. It's kind of a scary time, I think, for all of us, right? And so there's some really specific things that we hope that you're doing, that we really want to encourage you to do. I'm going to just make this kind of open. I've got a bunch of slides that our policy folks gave me, but if you have anything at any time that you would like to ask a question about or make a comment about, feel free to interrupt me. I don't mind that at all. All right, let me see if I can figure out how this works. Green? That green or that green? Top green. All right, that was a trick question. There's more than one green button. Okay, so in the first week of our new administration, there was a lot going on. So even during the inauguration, our new president was signing orders. And a lot of these have had some significant effects on our, just kind of on the way we handle ourselves in science. One of the things I think has been particularly problematic, particularly for universities, has been the DEI directives that we need to not recognize those. So I think in a lot of your universities, there's likely already been some movement in that direction. We've already had to deal with the Supreme Court ruling that admissions for colleges and for graduate programs had to stop taking diversity into account. And so I think all of us had already started to deal with that and use ways in which we could encourage people to apply to our programs, help them get into our programs without violating the spirit of the Supreme Court's decision. I think it was a little more of a shock for all of us that DEI programs are now not allowed in granting in grants. And so if you are like us, I mean, our society, FASEB, has 2 DEI grants. And so we are still running those grants. They've not been rescinded, but we are kind of expecting that to happen. Dealing with those issues has been, I think, really difficult as we think about broadening the workforce for science. I think all of us have valued the diversity that we have amongst our coworkers, and I think this has been one of the biggest issues that we're having to deal with. I don't know that we have a really great way to deal with it yet, but I will tell you that FASEB is not backing down from our commitment to DEI, and we're talking about that in terms of our workforce. If we lose our grants, we lose our grants. We're not going to back down. And we'll try and figure out a way to continue with those programs without the grants. There's been a bunch of other stuff, as you can see, that has gone on. So let's talk about some of the others. So it's been kind of bumpy, right? I hope this is not the new normal, but I think it's definitely things that we're going to have to deal with. And figuring out how we deal with the issues that are happening with funding with DEI is definitely something that we're going to have to work on. We have a new political environment, so I think the issue for us is really how HHS is changing. So Robert F. Kennedy was confirmed as the Secretary of HHS, and as you all, I'm sure know, he has a different idea of what research and scientific evidence looks like. I don't know if that's the worm in his brain or what it is exactly, but he's decided that all of the research that we have done over the years does not address the things that he is passionate about. And of course, I'm an immunologist, so I take the vaccine stuff kind of personally. But we are going to have to be able to work within what he wants to do. I think it's really important, though, that we push back where we need to. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. It's an interesting cabinet, though. We have some television stars. We have some large donors of the president's, and we have a bunch of Floridians. So I actually lived in Florida for quite a few years, so I'm not sure how I feel about that exactly, but it is different. And so the environment is different. So the only one here that has not been confirmed yet is Elise Stefanik for the United Nations, and I'm not sure when she is up for, when she's going to be up for a vote. I did hear today that our Vice President and our Secretary of Defense, did you guys hear this? So there's something new every day, right? So today, it's that they were talking to one another about defense strategies in the Middle East that are highly confidential, and they were using some kind of a open source app that a journalist from The Atlantic happened to be on. So that has been leaked. So the fun happens every day, right? So there's always something. So in this new political environment, we've dealt with over 100 executive orders. And so these are just a few of them. There are many, I think, that we have as scientists that we likely have some issues with, and things that are particularly difficult for us to deal with. I've already talked about the DEI programs. That was the Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI programs and preferencing. Defending women from gender ideology, extremism. There's quite a few that are affecting our scientific community. DOGE, perhaps, is one that has caused us the biggest angst, and that is because, as Elon Musk has shown, he's using a chainsaw to cut, as opposed to doing this thoughtfully. I don't think any of us would argue that in large organizations there's waste, right? And that there are things that could be changed. And I don't think anybody would argue that maybe there are things that could be changed at NIH or NSF or any government organization. But I think the manner in which this has happened has been a real issue. And so the fact that DOGE has moved really fast, they don't seem to have any limits until the courts step in, is concerning. This has been a bipartisan concern. As the FASEB Board of Directors were on Capitol Hill last week to educate and to talk about funding the 2026 budget, since 2025 was resolved about a week ago with a continuing resolution. So everything went flat for this year. But it's time to talk about the 2026 budget. And so while we were there, part of what we do is we educate our legislators on what NIH is and how it works and why it's so important to fund science. And it was pretty clear from some of the congressional offices that I was in that even Congress doesn't really know what's going to happen next. They are not getting a lot of information in terms of what is happening at our institutions. They have, I'm pretty sure that at your institutions you have government affairs personnel who have been going to the Hill and have been trying to educate them, particularly when the executive order to slash indirect costs to 15% happened. I know ours were out the door right away to go and try and educate on what indirects are and why they're important. Particularly important, I'll also say, for our core facilities, right? So this has been, as I said, bipartisan. However, because there has been pushback, and because scientists are speaking out, it's been, and not just scientists, but the public in general. the president recently made it clear that cabinet members are in charge of their domains, and that DOJ can make recommendations. I think the issue we need to deal with now is making sure that those cabinet members do the right thing, right, and that they actually exert the power that they have. Some of them tend to be just following what DOJ wants, and that's going to be, I think, a problem for us. And just out of curiosity, because my state is doing this, I'm from Kentucky, does anybody have their state trying to establish a DOJ? Yeah, where are you? Florida, yeah. Florida and Kentucky, we're going to have our own version of DOJ, right? So I don't think this concept is going to go away. And I think what's really important is that we push back where it's really important for us. Though I'm going to talk mostly about NIH and about NSF funding and how important that is for all of us. I also want to mention that most of you are in cores in medical schools. A lot of you, yeah. So those of you in medical schools, Medicaid could be a big issue for you. All right, so Congress is looking to slash Medicaid. DOJ is heading that direction. Medicaid funds our medical schools to a large extent, particularly if you're at a public university. And generally speaking, for most universities and medical schools, the medical enterprise helps fund basic research. All right, and that funding of basic research, if Medicaid gets slashed a significant amount, could lead to issues with funding for research. So this is broad. This is not just what's happening at NIH. I'm saying that not as the FASEB president, because FASEB doesn't necessarily deal with Medicaid issues, but I'm just telling you that as a scientist, that I think this is something that we need to pay attention to as well. So we have this new political environment. A lot of it is testing the Constitution. So Russ Vought has been confirmed, or is it Vote? Do you guys know? Vought. I think it's Vought. He's confirmed as the director of the White House Office of Management and Budget, or OMB. He was also OMB director for Trump's first administration. So during the Biden years, those guys went home and thought about what they had done the first time and how they would change it, and he's one of them. He is actually one of the ones behind the Project 2025, which is the blueprint that they are actually following. There's a section in there about NIH, and they are following it pretty closely from what I've been told. He believes that the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974 is unconstitutional. So that is an act in which Congress essentially has the power of the purse, and the president is limited in terms of what he is able to do after money is allocated by the Congress. What is going on is the president is trying to get more power. I guess that's obvious to all of us, right? So there is a showdown between the executive and the legislative branch over this federal spending. So far, the Republican Congress has not pushed back as much as I guess we would like to see. But hopefully that as they learn more, they'll do that. But part of them doing that is us going to their offices and telling them why they should push back. So this just kind of gives the timeline in terms of what's happening with OMB, and they're wanting to freeze the budget. So when they came in, that's exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to freeze money, stop spending money, and give them a chance to figure out where the money should go. So they directed all federal agencies, this is a week after the inauguration, to freeze funding on programs related to the executive orders that had already been issued by the White House. Unfortunately, agencies interpreted the memo as a freeze on all federal spending, and so a lot of federal spending was stopped, and that included NIH spending. So as you know, you probably noticed, study sections quit meeting. Nick said he was in the middle of one when that came down, and they just sent them home halfway through. So those study sections now have started to meet again. We are way behind, and that's a problem. So lawsuits were immediately filed. So you see, the 27th was the directive. On the 28th, lawsuits were filed by nonprofits and 23 state attorneys general in U.S. District Court in Rhode Island, and they were challenging the legality of the freeze. There was a temporary restraining order halting the freeze. Then that was extended on February 3rd, so that is still in effect. On January 31st, district judge issued a temporary restraining order halting the funding freeze in the case filed by the state attorneys general, and that remains in effect indefinitely. And there were a couple of other, in February, a couple of other rulings. So on February 10th, there was a second ruling ordering the administration to immediately disperse frozen funds. So that had not been said explicitly. And on February 12th, the NIH was ordered to release funds for previously approved competing and non-competing continuation grants and administrative supplements. So I don't know if you noticed at your institutions when you submit a continuing, a non-competing continuation, for instance, there's some button that gets pushed and that grant gets sent out. Those buttons had disappeared, right? And so there was a halt in the ability to actually get those grants, which had already been approved, I mean, they were already, people had already been spending the money. And so this, in February 12th, that started to move again. But again, it made everybody nervous, right? On March 10th, the Department of Justice filed a notice that it's going to appeal the Rhode Island District Court's order to the First U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. So the legal wrangling is far from over. All right, and I don't think I need to remind you that that the 119th Congress, the Senate has 53 Republicans and there's 47 Democrats, 2 of whom we're calling Democrats, but they're independents that caucus with the Democrats. So importantly, 60 votes are needed to pass most bills. So the Republicans do need 7 Democrats to help them. And that's what happened with the continuing resolution, is, as you know, Democrats who crossed over and voted for the continuing resolution were very concerned that closing the government was a bad idea. And that's why they crossed over. Generally for us as scientists, closing the government is a bad idea. All right, so we didn't get any increases at NIH for this year, but at least now money is coming. So that, I think money coming is good, right? Closing the government may have been bad. The other parts of me wanted them to do it, I have to say. There are a couple of appointments that happened because of the election. So John Husted, a Republican of Ohio, replaced J.D. Vance when he was elected vice president, and then Marco Rubio from Florida became Secretary of State, and so Ashley Moody of Florida took his place. And the majority leader is John Thune from South Dakota, and minority leader is Chuck Schumer. In the House, there's 218 Republicans and 215 Democrats, and this only requires a simple majority to pass, and that means the Republicans really can't lose much in order to pass anything. So interestingly, there's several vacancies that are going on. So Matt Gaetz, as you recall, was nominated to be Attorney General. Is that right? Yeah. And he had an ethics problem and ended up losing that nomination, but he had already, in order to avoid an ethics probe by the House, had already vacated that seat. So he had resigned on January 3rd. Michael Waltz resigned on January 20th. And then there's been a couple of deaths, and so those have to be replaced. So there'll be another vacancy if Elise Stefanik is confirmed as the UN ambassador. So some of these seats, there's special elections in April. The two in Florida, there's special elections that happen to fill those seats. All right, so there is a caucus. So in the House and the Senate, there are groups of congressmen who kind of band together if they have similar interests, and these are caucuses. And so the House has a caucus that is they call a Doge caucus, and there's 100 members there who essentially are on kind of the Doge side of cuts. There's also a Doge caucus in the Senate, led by Joni Ernst of Iowa, and you can see there's a number of senators who are also part of that caucus. So these are folks who are in favor of all the cuts that are taking place. That makes it harder for us in terms of advocating for being more careful about these cuts. All right, so Congress, and in particular the U.S. House of Representatives, has essentially the power of the purse based on Article 1 of our U.S. Constitution. And that is, the House comes up with a budget, and the budget then has to be reconciled with the budget that the Senate will come up with. That reconciliation is actually really important. The ability to reconcile some years is easier than others. And so what we're hoping for in the 2026 budget is there'll be some ability to reconcile. We frequently have these continuing resolutions because they're unable to do that. So these are some of the folks who are really interested, who are important in terms of appropriations. So Susan Collins is the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and that's she's a Republican. However, she is pretty sympathetic for science, and she frequently is in favor of funding higher levels for NIH. And she has also been unhappy about, as you can see the quote there, about the possibility of the executive branch having more power of the purse. Patty Murray is the vice chair for Senate Appropriations, and she is traditionally a big proponent of NIH research. Rosa DeLauro is the ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee, also has been traditionally a proponent of NIH funding and research. And then Tom Cole, who also is the chair of the House Appropriations Committee, and though he has also traditionally been a proponent of NIH research, he's taking a little bit of a different approach, I think, this year to appropriations. All right, so one of the problems that has come up has been a Department of Health and Human Services communications pause. So January 21st, the acting secretary of HHS, Dorothy Fink, issued a memo ordering an immediate pause on releasing documents and public communications through February 1st, and then all travel was suspended indefinitely. So NIH falls under HHS, and so I don't know if you've noticed that travel has not, travel by all NIH employees stopped. It just so happens that today is Trainee Research Day at the University of Kentucky College of Medicine. And the keynote speaker is from NIH. And so he contacted us and said, well, I'm not going to be able to come as soon as this happened. Let me see. Travel started to happen a little bit later. And so he contacted us again and said, well, no, I can come. But he's talking about AI, and he wasn't talking about his research per se. He was talking about AI and policy, which, by the way, there was a good talk in here just previously to that about that same thing. And he is actually doing it, or did it, because Eastern time zone. He actually did that talk by Zoom because they can't travel because they can only spend no more than $1 on their credit cards. So he was unable to travel, and they didn't want him giving a talk on policy. And I think actually that was a bigger issue for him. So NIH stopped its publications. The Federal Register was not having things put on it. So for those of you who don't know, All study sections have to appear on the Federal Register 2 weeks before they meet. And if you can't get something on the Federal Register, study sections can't meet. So that was one way that that HHS was able to stop study sections from meeting. Once we could see them, I mean, it's public, right? So you can see the Federal Register. So once we could see that study sections were reappearing, we knew that that had been loosened up, and we were able to see study sections start again. And now they're scrambling, actually, to try and get all these grants reviewed that have been backed up. And the problem now is that that councils have not met. So once study sections meet and grants get scored, the scores go to the institution or to the council for each of the institutes. And the institutes then start funding based on who has the best scores, right? And you can't get your grant funded actually until council meets and decides on which grants are going to be actually funded. Generally speaking, they start at the best score and they go down until they run out of money. Sometimes they'll find something that's on the edge or maybe even below the funding line that they're interested in, and they'll pull that up. All right. But until those start meeting again, we still won't have any new grants come through. Another issue that has happened is, let me see, I might be getting away from myself. All right. Let me go ahead and move on. Is this. So on March 3rd, HHS issued a notice in the Federal Register, which is now accepting stuff, announcing the immediate rescission of public participation in the rulemaking process, and this is called the Richardson waiver. So this was adopted in 1971, and essentially it allowed HHS to obtain comments from any kinds of rules that they were thinking about changing. And this has been really important because that means that the public can comment on any of the rules that are taking place in HHS. And so those are rules are associated with things like public property, loans, grants, important for us, benefits or contracts. This means that there's a loss of transparency. If the public can no longer comment, there's a loss of transparency. So at FASEB, we were really concerned about this because one of the things that we do a lot is comment. So NIH and NSF, for instance, will frequently put out requests for information, asking for the community's input on all kinds of things. And our Science Policy Committee routinely comments on all kinds of things. The last time there was a reorganization of CSR, for instance, there were public comments on how that should go, right? And not having the community be able to comment was a real concern for us. It turns out that NIH doesn't use the Richardson waiver very often, but they are actually really good about asking for comment in spite of that. So I don't know I don't know if this is going to affect NIH. We've been putting in comments anyway, because there were RFIs that came out before the change in administration, and we've just been continuing to put those in. So, I mean, hopefully somebody's listening. So the NIH personnel changes, Matthew Mamoli became the acting director. He's a virologist who actually was very vocal within NIH during COVID in that he didn't believe that there should be all the shutdowns and the things that happened to try and protect the public. And I'm certain that's how he got identified as being an acting director, because his views fall more in line with the current administration. On February 11th, Larry Tabak, who was the principal deputy director, resigned. Mike Lauer, the deputy director for extramural research, resigned on February 14th. And that was the same day that over 1,000 probationary employees got terminated. There was an article in, I think, the New York Times, just maybe this week, or maybe it was even earlier today, about the disruption that the loss of those employees has caused, from everything from healthcare to how labs order their supplies. This is still going on. It's kind of quiet. But this has been a real issue within, and turmoil within NIH. In March 5th, the Help Committee, which funds NIH, held a confirmation hearing to review Jay Bhattacharya as the NIH director. That has not been voted on by the full Senate yet. And his nomination, the reason why is because his nomination was voted on by the Help Committee and forwarded to the full Senate, but the Senate on the 14th went on recess for the next week, so they just got back. So this should be happening pretty soon. All right. This was a problem. Okay. So on February 7th, the NIH guide announced that there was going to be a 15% cap on F&A costs on all grants effective February 10th. So my institution is at 55%. Some institutions, particularly institutions that have non-human primates, are in the, what is yours, Andy, 80 something? 86%? Yeah. And there is virtually no way that any institution that has NIH grants can survive on 15% indirect costs. So there was an immediate lawsuit. 23 state attorneys general sued. And that went to a district court judge in Massachusetts who issued a temporary restraining order and blocked the implementation of the F&A cap. So it turns out that F&A is mentioned in appropriations bills, in that that the process, and this started in 2017, that the F&A process should be the same as it is now. That is in all appropriations bills every year. And so that made it into the continuing resolution. So for this year, the rest of 2025, F&A has to stay the same. The issue now is what's going to happen next. So while we were on the Hill, I know I heard from a staffer in my district that there are going to be negotiations to try and have a flat F&A. The talk is, I've heard anywhere from 25 to 45%. Right? And that's going to be, what I've heard is that will be across the board. So right now, some grants have a higher F&A than other grants. So anything that's a training grant, for instance, that only pays personnel, those have very low indirect rates. They're 8 to 10%, right? If you do across the board, meaning all grants, whether it's a training grant or it's an R01, which has the highest F&A, if you do across the board, some institutions actually might be okay and actually might be a little bit better if they have a lot of training grants, all right? You are not going to be good, all right? Because that's a primate center. Yep. Yes. Yes. So and F&A is a huge issue for ABRF and for cores. So I know my institution, part of our calculation is support for cores, like paying for the service contracts, for instance. That's done out of our F&A. Andy? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the rest of our research enterprise.
It should be okay.
Well, okay.
Depends on what it is, right?
So our primate center is in the 80+% range, but the rest of our research enterprise is around 56%. So, you know, it'll still be really tough, but not as difficult as the Oregon Primate Research Center.
Yeah.
And I know that I was just talking to Aaron Larson here, I'm not seeing him here, but the Fred Hutch is somewhere in Seattle, is somewhere, their whole institution is somewhere in the upper 80 range, so.
Yeah. So one of the things the staffer asked me was, why are different institutions so different? Right? That's a great question, actually. So, right? This is a political science major, staffer, right? And that is a great question. So a lot of it has to do with where an institution is, how expensive staff is, cost of living in that area. So F&A covers all kinds of stuff. It's not just keeping the lights on. You've probably noticed that we have rules and regulations that we have to follow. We have IACUCs and IRBs and biosafety, and we have to get rid of chemical waste in certain ways, and all of that is paid through F&A. All right. Whoever messes up your orders, right? That's all, you know, those people are paid through F&A. However, whoever budgets your grants, helps you budget your grants, right? You probably have people who help with your pre-award, and then people who help with the post-award to help you know how much money you have, right? All of that, right? All of that comes in F&A. And so these calculations are going to be really important, almost certainly based on what we've heard. There's going to be negotiations. They're going to be renegotiated. So there are scientists who have wanted renegotiation of F&A for a while, right? This is not, administrators all have their hair on fire over this, but I think a lot of us as scientists think that these need to be reasonable, all right? Because if you're spending more on overhead, you're spending less in the lab, and we want to spend more in the lab. So this will be an interesting conversation, I think. It's absolutely clear that 15% is the wrong number. But I think you should pay attention to your institutions, because there are going to be more communications about that. There's a judge has issued a TRO blocking implementation of this in all 50 states, and so until that gets lifted, nothing is going to happen. So there is and actually March 5th, a district court judge in Massachusetts issued a preliminary injunction that replaces the temporary restraining order. And so that is actually a good sign, because the preliminary injunction, opposed to the restraining order, the preliminary injunctions is actually done when there's some merit to the lawsuit. All right. The restraining orders often are to figure out if there's merit. All right, and they are temporary. Okay, so NIH study sections are meeting again. We know that 50 study sections were announced the week of March 3rd. 26 special emphasis panels, 72 study sections announced the week of March 10th. And so things are moving again. That's a good thing. But again, the advisory council meetings are on hold, and we do not know when those are going to start again, because the information that's coming out of NIH is really sparse. So on March 6th, NIH announced its intent to centralize peer review for all grants. So right now, peer review, about, 78% of peer review is done centrally at NIH through CSR. The rest of it is done through specific institutes. And the issue with doing it this way is that some of these grants really need specialized review. And if you try and centralize everything, then some of those may not be reviewed by absolute experts in those fields. And so that's what some of the concern is about this. And so we're just going to have to pay attention and see what happens. If everything gets moved to CSR was already shorthanded in terms of personnel to handle all of the study sections. And so it's unclear whether or not they'll move some of the institute or center personnel into CSR to help handle that, or how they're going to do it, or if they're going to continue with their cuts and just cut people. That would be hard, because that means that either study sections have to handle larger numbers of grants, and they're already hard to handle for those, if any of you review grants, it's already a big lift. So this is something else that we need to pay attention to. The last time this process was changed, there was public comment. I mean, there's been no comment here, right? They don't care what we think right now. And so this is another place where we need to use our voices, because this could make a big difference in how grants get funded. All right, let me stop there. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything? You've been a little quiet. Is this too much? Yes.
It's really a great talk. I'm learning a lot, so thank you so much. I know there's a lot of things going on very rapidly. I hope, there could be some Zoom meeting like this every 2 or 3 months so we can get some update. That would be fantastic. My question, though, is you said that there will be renegotiation about the indirect cost. Is there any plan that will be phased in, meaning that it will get gradually changed? And another question, maybe this more on the technical side, because this has been, what is preventing the indirect cost from changing is part of the appropriation bill. So to change that, does it take a regular budget appropriation process, or it can be done through budget renegotiation, meaning reconciliation, meaning a simple majority in the Senate, or it takes 60 votes? How does it work?
So, okay, so the negotiations happen between each institution, then they happen, I think, every 3 years, between each institution and some office. I forget the name of it. There's an office in the federal government that does these negotiations, and it's not an NIH office, right? And they negotiate the indirect costs. And so those negotiations, what's in the appropriations legislation is that there's not going to be a change in how that's done. All right. So if that language drops, it's like 1 or 2 sentences. If that language drops, then there will be the ability to negotiate. All right. That has to be agreed upon by both the House and the Senate. Okay. So, so that's how that might happen. Okay. So during the 2026, if there's significant concern about this during 2026, they will have to, that they may negotiate that language. And if that happens, then the bill in the Senate, I think the budget bill in the Senate still has to be 60, all right? So you're still going to have to, that's still going to have to be approved there, all right? So people are going to have to cross the aisle.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other?
What can we do?
I'm gonna, how are we doing for time? All right, all right. On your website, there is a link to FASEB resources, all right? So first of all, I would recommend that you hit that link. There's a resource center. There's Legislative Action Center information, and this will link you. You can get a link that will allow you to put in your address, and it will automatically set you up to send messages to your legislators, to your senators, and whatever congressional district you live in. There's suggested language there that you can use, but you can edit. So I highly recommend you either pick up the phone and call. You can go to local, all of your legislators have local offices. You can go drop in and talk to them, all right? If any of them are having town halls when they're home, they were home last week, Show up at town halls and talk. Write to them. All right. The more they hear, the more they get, the more they listen. All right. Even if your district is Democrat. Yep. If you're in a red state, definitely go do that, right? But even if you're in a Democrat state, go do that, right? The Democrat congressional delegations also pay attention to what is being said. It just gives them more fuel, okay, to know that their folks are on top of this. You can write op-eds. Okay. Yes.